Hello, my name is Alex, and welcome to my senior TED Talk. So, portrait photography or portraiture is photography of a person or a group of people that displays the expression, personality, and the mood of the subject. Like other types of portraiture, the focus of the photograph is usually on the person's face. A good portrait will contain at least one element that reveals the subject's personality, the nature of that person, their attitude, and their unique mannerisms, or any of the features or traits that form that individual nature of that person. And it basically tells us something about the subject. And when we speak of portrait photography in general terms, there's a tendency to overlook the subcategories. From strictly formal to candid street portraits, there's a range of more common types of photography. Photography was invented in 1839 by Louis Daguerre, which is this lovely human right there. And he basically presented the concept of photography to French Academy of Sciences. Later that same year, what was considered to be the first photographic self-portrait was taken by Robert Cornelius, which is this person. And this is actually the very first portrait that was ever taken of himself. He basically removed the lens from the camera, ran in front of the camera, sat there for about 5 minutes, and then ran back to the camera and put the lens back onto the camera so that he could produce that. And on the back he wrote the first photographic portrait, 1839. So, first, so the Oxford Dictionaries first presented the word of the year in 2013 to be selfie, which was defined as a photograph taken of oneself or multiple people. In this particular moment, this would be called a someone elsey, because they're all different people, but this is a really iconic selfie, someone elsey. So first we have candid portraits. A candid photo is a photograph that is captured without creating a posed appearance. So taking photos of people when they have no idea that you're taking them, and that is basically called candid photography. One of the beauties of this photography is that you're able to catch someone in the act. It adds life to the pictures, and if you look at magazines such as Time, you'll see great examples of candid photography. For other examples, you can just flip through pages of Time, and I do have a little album up there of some candid photography. If you guys are able to point some of those out, that's pretty cool. Although a candid shot can seem easy, it's pretty difficult because you have to kind of understand how to work your camera and capture unplanned moments of someone's emotions, be it cheerfulness or tears. Then we have posed portraits, and these are where the photographer and the subject worked collectively together to come up with a photograph that is going to kind of say something about the person. So like this one right here, he's clearly thinking about something very deep and looks a little concerned, and she's just thinking about life. But basically, your subjects should continue to do their thing, but basically just feel natural and normal. And so unconsciously they will try to look natural for you, which makes them look not natural, which is always the case when shooting someone that knows that they're being photographed. Then we have formal portraits. A formal portrait is a posed picture of a person or a group of people, and it focuses on clearly showing facial features that may be designed to highlight a certain characteristic of that subject. So Afghan Girl, this right here, I know all of you have probably seen that, but it is a 1984 photographic portrait by journalist Steve McCurry, which appeared on the June 1985 cover of National Geographic. This image is of an adolescent girl who has very beautiful green eyes, and she's wearing a red headscarf, looking intensely at the camera. And it has been likened to Leonardo da Vinci's painting of Mona Lisa, and it has been called the first world's third world Mona Lisa. It's kind of hard to say. But formal portraits are different from informal ones, which show the subject in casual poses, possibly looking away or engaged in some activity. And it is a long-standing method to capture professional-looking images. And this one, he's just my favorite person. So then there are a couple portraits as well. Those are exactly what they sound like. A portrait including two people who love each other very much. Ouch. Couple photography is more about the connection and the interaction between those two people, and the feelings between the two people. And most of those emotions are probably very deep and passionate, which makes couple photography so delightful and positive. And generally, a couple should be easy to engage in a photo shoot just because they're with somebody that they love and they're together. But if they start feeling a bit shy or uncomfortable, you can always ask them to act how they felt when they first met, or how they're around each other just on a normal day. But it can be a bit more difficult than photographing individuals, just because when I'm photographing individuals, you can follow certain posing rules to make the subject look their best. Then we have choosing the right background for your portraits. And a background can make or break your image, but put your subject in front of a super busy scene like this, and it kind of takes the focus off your subject. But if it's not too crazy in the background, like that looks like a pretty busy background, but it works enough to where most of the focus is on the subject and not just the background. And that all comes with like editing the photos as well in Photoshop, and you can make the background more blurry, or just really getting the zoom and the focus on your camera very focused on the subject. But choosing the right background or backdrop for your subject can be just as important as choosing the right lens for the shot. So there are several different types of backgrounds out there, from indoor to outdoor locations, and plain seamless paper and everything in between. And so a few general types of backgrounds and some pros and cons to consider for using them are an indoor and outdoor location can be wonderful choice and can give context to editorial, fashion, and environmental portrait work. However, sometimes the background can be busy and distracting and causing need for some type of faux background. And portable backgrounds are also great because they are very versatile and convenient due to their collapsibility, and they are pretty inexpensive. You'd be surprised at how cheap those are. But you can use them in the studio or take them with you to any location that you're going to. So, they say that the eyes have it, and although I usually don't listen to them, in this case I do believe that they're actually correct. The eyes are the main focus in portraits because they tell so much about our subject, and the eyes are just the main focus in portraits because they tell some sort of story. Have you ever looked or seen a photograph of a subject and their mouth is smiling but their eyes are not, or when the subject is when the subject's eyes are smiling but they are not? Which would you believe? I would believe the eyes, of course, because the eyes have it. They say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. But getting both eyes sharp and in focus is a key to what many photographers use or refer to as eye pop or eye sparkle. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the eyes are going to sparkle with sparkles. It just means that they are there and they're just the main focus. So the art of portrait lighting is the art of bringing out the essence in an individual and identifying the person's personality or facial features, and coming up with a lighting scheme that will synchronize with them. So many photographers do fall into the habit of using a stock setup for all of their work without consideration of the person that they are photographing. So they would use some of these, but the light would sometimes be too harsh, or the light just wouldn't, the focus of the subject isn't the subject, the focus of the subject is the light. And that is where all of the wrong details will come in, and your lighting and your portrait will not turn out very well. But there are multiple different lighting techniques that you can use for these, and I will show you what some of these are. They're actually very interesting. So the first one that we have is a catch light. So you can see in this picture right here, it's kind of hard to see, but there are little white dots in her eyes. This is actually one of my really good friends. I took this picture. But a catch light is basically any form of lighting that you can see in the eyes. So here what I did is I placed her in front of the sun, so the sun was behind her, and then I used a reflector to bounce back the light into her eyes and form the catch light in her eyes. And basically it just adds a little bit more character to the subject. One of the most common, or the most talked about and least understood lighting styles is Rembrandt lighting. And that one is, people mistakenly refer to it out as Rembrandt lighting to describe of any sort of chiaroscuro effect with dramatic highlights and shadows. Excuse me. But while it is certainly dramatic, in reality the defining characteristics of the technique is the triangle light that it creates right here. And so to create this kind of lighting, you would want the harsh lighting, so you would want to put a harsh light kind of up here in the corner and face it down at a 45-degree angle on top of their face. And then, so that creates the shadow of the bridge of their nose, creates this little triangle right here. And then as well as not being able to, or not having too much light on this side, so it just creates this triangle effect underneath the person's eyes. And then there is split lighting, which is exactly what it sounds like, split right down the face. But basically you just want to have a really harsh lighting on either side of the subject's face, and if you have it on this side, it's going to create a harsh shadow on the other side of the subject's face to where you can't see it, to give it a more dramatic look. But to soften the effect, you can use like another, so if you didn't want it this harsh, you could put a harsh lighting over here, but then also put either a reflector or another softbox next to it, just so it's not as harsh and you can still see the subject's face. And then there is the glamour and butterfly lighting. So that style goes by several names, mostly associated with Hollywood. But it's also referred to butterfly lighting because of the shape that it creates underneath the subject's nose. So to create this effect, you would have your harsh lighting right above the subject, kind of where this light is right now if I stand right here. And then that lighting is going to, your nose is going to cast a shadow underneath the tip right here, just to create that little butterfly effect. But glamour lighting was actually made popular in the 1930s, and it has remained a mainstay of portrait work ever since. So that's really cool. And the goal here is to emphasize the cheekbones and just kind of shape the shape of a classically beautifully oval face. And it kind of creates like deeper eye sockets just to make the picture more intense. And then there's loop lighting over here. This is, clearly it's my picture. But loop lighting, it basically, your harsh shadow or your harsh light is over here, but you can still see the other side of the person's face, so there's not any shadows, but there is just one shadow around the nose, and it just kind of, the loop lighting kind of just makes it look like you have a longer nose, so it just kind of fixes the structure of the face and just makes it look thinner. So this is from, his name is John Edelman, and he says, if you aren't filling the frame with your subject, you're just wasting your camera's precious pixels. Instead, you should fill the frame with your subject just as much as you can while you're shooting, and not in post. It really comes down to two factors. You're either lazy or afraid, and in my case, both. So, with that being said, framing is a huge part of photography, or at least portrait photography. And you can see here how this picture is much more flattering than this one, because there's just too much room above her head in the picture, and then this one is cropped at a perfect angle to where it's more focused on her, and then this one is cropped to an angle where it seems like it's more focused on the background instead of her. But you can always use your lens, and you can always fix it in Photoshop later, but you would you're just wasting the capabilities of your camera sensor and ultimately compromising the quality of the image if you just take a picture and throw it into Photoshop and crop it. And you might not be able to crop it later if you do the fill frame. So this would be a fill frame, and then this would not be a fill frame, just because she fills the entire frame of that picture. Altering your perspective is another good way, because photographers also always happen to fall into the bad habit of shooting everything that we see from eye level. So we see something that we like, we want to take a picture of it, we take a picture of it just the way it is. We don't try different perspectives, and I am a victim of that. I don't ever get down to new perspectives, and I just need to learn to do that. But altering your perspective, like if you want to make an immediate impact on your photography, you need to get out of your eye level rut, and you need to change your perspective. You can change your composition by zooming in or out with your lens, or you can definitely just walk around. You can move your feet, you can get up high, you can get down low. If you get down low, you can make your subject, if you're photographing a person, you can make your subject seem taller. Or if you want a picture of a really pretty flower, you can get down low again and just kind of make that the bigger part of your photography. So subjects viewed from below can also look commanding and powerful, and even if you don't want to physically get up high, standing and shooting does not mean you can only just shoot straight ahead. You can spend some time looking up, and you'll find plenty to improve in your composition and your perspective. And the power and immensity of these pictures right here. This one is clearly taken from somebody who's standing up very high, so it just makes for a more dramatic effect. And then this one looks like it was taken upside down. I'm pretty sure it was, but you never know with photography anymore. But you can't fall into the trap of shooting everything that you see at eye level, just as you see it. So you need to get low, see what changes, get up high, and explore a new view, or move laterally and watch different interactions occur and disappear in between objects. So what exactly does create good portrait photography? Because for me, it's all about the lighting, it's all about positioning people, and it's all about who you're photographing. You have to know the person that you're photographing, you have to know what they want and what you want, and you have to just work well with them and know how your cameras work and how everything else works in portrait photography. Thank you.